I am 28 years old. My husband Liam is 30, or he was my husband for about 4 hours. Our story didn't have a happy ending. It had an ending that was necessary. It started on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The music was soft. It was our song. Liam's arms were around me and my head rested on his shoulder. We were in the middle of our first dance as husband and wife. The world felt perfect, a warm, glowing bubble of happiness. I could feel the gentle rhythm of his heart against my cheek. I closed my eyes, wanting to lock this moment in my memory forever. The scent of my bouquet, the soft fabric of his suit, the low murmur of our friends and family watching us. It was everything I had ever dreamed of. Then the bubble burst. A voice cut through the music, sharp and cold. It was a woman's voice, one I recognized with a sickening jolt. "Liam, you can't do this." I opened my eyes. Standing at the edge of the dance floor was Clara, Liam's ex-girlfriend. She was wearing a simple dress that did nothing to hide the swell of her belly. She was pregnant. Very pregnant. My heart stopped. The music faltered and then died completely. A shocked silence fell over the room. Everyone was staring at her, then at us. Liam froze. His arms went stiff around me. I pulled back a little to look at his face. He was pale, his eyes wide with a look I couldn't quite decipher. Was it shock? Fear? Guilt? Clara took a step forward. Her eyes were locked on Liam, filled with tears. "You can't marry her," she said, her voice trembling but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Not when I'm carrying your son." The words echoed in the silent hall. His son. My breath hitched in my throat. I looked from Clara's tear-streaked face to Liam's frozen one. I felt 100 pairs of eyes on me, drilling into my back. Humiliation washed over me, hot and suffocating. This perfect day, my perfect day, had shattered into a million tiny pieces. I felt my own dream turning into a public nightmare. Liam finally seemed to find his voice, but it was just a whisper. "Clara, what are you doing here?" he asked. "What am I doing here?" she repeated, her voice rising with hysteria. "I'm here to stop you from making the biggest mistake of your life. Our son deserves a father." I stepped away from Liam, my wedding dress feeling like a costume for a tragedy. I needed space. I needed to breathe. My gaze swept across the room. I saw my parents, their faces a mixture of horror and concern. I saw my friends, their mouths agape. And then I saw Liam's parents. His mother, Beatrice, was already moving. She wasn't moving towards me, her new daughter-in-law. She was rushing towards Clara, her arms outstretched in a gesture of comfort. My mother-in-law was comforting the woman who had just destroyed my wedding. His father, Arthur, stood still. He was a quiet man, always in the background. I had barely exchanged more than a few dozen words with him in the entire time I had known Liam. But now, his eyes met mine across the room. There was no pity in his gaze. There was something else. A flicker of anger, of deep, profound disappointment. But it wasn't directed at me. He was looking past me, at his own son. That look was the first sign that not everything was as it seemed. It was a tiny crack in the nightmare. A hint that the truth was far more complicated than the scene playing out before us. In that moment, I made a decision. I would not cry. I would not crumble. I would find out the truth. The silence in the room finally broke. People started whispering. My mother started to walk towards me, her face pale. But before she could reach me, Beatrice had her arm around Clara, guiding her to a chair. There, you shouldn't be on your feet in your condition," Beatrice cooed, loud enough for everyone to hear. She was playing the part of the concerned grandmother-to-be perfectly. She shot a look at me, a look of pure triumph. It was a look that said, "I won." I felt a cold rage begin to build in my chest, pushing back the hurt and humiliation. I turned to Liam. He was still just standing there, looking helpless. Liam, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Is it true? He wouldn't look at me. He stared at the floor, at his polished shoes. It's complicated, he muttered. Is it your baby? I pressed. I needed a clear answer, not an evasion, not a complication. I don't know for sure, he stammered. We were broken up. It was a mistake. A mistake. Our entire relationship, our marriage, was being threatened by a mistake. And he didn't even have the courage to look me in the eye. That was when I knew. I knew that whatever the truth was, Liam was not on my side. He was a ship without a rudder, tossed about by the storms created by the women around him. His mother, his ex, and now, me. My father walked over to me then. He put a hand on my arm. Let's go, honey, he said quietly. We can sort this out later. I shook my head. No, I said. I'm not running away. I looked at Beatrice, who was now glaring at me. I looked at Clara, who was sobbing into her hands. And I looked at Liam, who was the very picture of weakness. I would not be the one to flee in shame. This was my wedding. I had a right to be here. I had a right to answers. The wedding planner, a frantic woman named Maria, rushed to my side. What should we do? She whispered, her eyes wide with panic. Should I ask everyone to leave? No, I said again, my voice stronger this time. I turned to the DJ, who was hovering nervously by his equipment. Please play some music. He looked at me, then at Liam, then back at me, utterly confused. Just some quiet background music, I clarified. He nodded, and a soft, generic instrumental tune started to play, a surreal soundtrack to the unfolding drama. I walked over to the table where my parents were sitting. My mother hugged me tightly. Oh, sweetie, I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm okay, Mom, I lied. I wasn't okay. I was falling apart inside, but I refused to let them see it. I would not give Beatrice and Clara the satisfaction. From across the room, I watched the scene at the other table. Beatrice was fussing over Clara, getting her water, rubbing her back. Liam had finally moved and was standing awkwardly beside them. He was trying to talk to Clara, but his mother kept interrupting, speaking in low, urgent tones. They were a tight little circle of conspiracy. And then there was Arthur. He had not moved from his spot. He was watching his wife, his son, and the pregnant ex-girlfriend. His face was like stone. He caught my eye again, and this time he gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of his head. It was a warning, a message. Don't believe what you see. My heart, which had been pounding with anger and hurt, gave a small, hopeful flutter. Maybe I wasn't entirely alone in this. The rest of the evening was a blur. Some guests, mostly my family and friends, came up to offer their support. They told me how strong I was, how terrible this was. Others, mostly Liam's family friends, avoided me, whispering in corners and casting pitying glances my way. We didn't cut the cake. We didn't do the bouquet toss. The expensive meal we had chosen was barely touched. My wedding reception had turned into a wake. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, people started to leave. My parents wanted to take me home with them, but I refused. I'm going to our apartment, I told them. I need to talk to Liam. My mother looked worried. Are you sure that's a good idea? She asked. I'm sure, I said. I needed to face him. I needed to hear the whole story from his mouth without his mother's influence. When I got back to the apartment we were supposed to start our new life in, it was empty. Liam wasn't there. There was a hastily scribbled note on the kitchen counter. I'm sorry, I've taken Clara home. She was too upset. My mom is with her. We'll talk tomorrow. He had left me, on our wedding night, to take care of the woman who was supposedly carrying his child. And he had taken his mother with him. The note was the final betrayal. It wasn't just about Clara anymore. It was about Liam choosing them over me, over our marriage without a second thought. I sank onto a kitchen chair. The beautiful white dress I had spent months choosing now feeling like a shroud. The rage I had been suppressing all evening finally broke through. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was furious. And I was done being the victim. Tomorrow we would talk. But it wouldn't be the conversation he was expecting. I was going to get the truth. And then I was going to get justice. I spent that night alone in our marital bed, wide awake. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Clara's face, her swollen belly, Beatrice's smug smile, and Liam's weak, indecisive expression. The words, his son, played on a loop in my head. Was it true? The uncertainty was a special kind of torture. Part of me, the part that still loved him, wanted to believe it was a lie, a cruel trick. But another, more rational part of me knew that people don't just show up at weddings and make accusations like that without some basis in reality. The next morning, I woke up feeling exhausted but clear-headed. The anger from the night before had cooled into a hard, cold resolve. I took off my wedding ring and placed it on the nightstand. I couldn't wear it. Not until I knew the truth. I showered and got dressed, not in the honeymoon clothes I had packed, but in my most severe, no-nonsense outfit. I was preparing for battle. Liam finally came home around noon. He looked terrible. His eyes were red-rimmed and he hadn't shaved. He was still wearing his wedding suit, now rumpled and stained. He walked into the apartment hesitantly, like a stranger. "Hey," he said softly. "Don't hey me, Liam," I said, my voice flat. "Where have you been?" "I was at my mom's," he said. "Clara stayed there last night. She was a mess." "And what about me, Liam?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "Your wife. Was I not a mess? Did you even think about me?" "Of course I did," he said, but his eyes darted away. I had to make sure Clara was okay. And the baby." "The baby," I repeated. "So you believe her, just like that?" "It's possible," he said defensively. We slipped up. Once. It was a few months ago. I thought we were careful, but..." "A few months ago?" I asked, my mind racing. "When exactly?" "We had been engaged for 6 months. A few months ago would have been right in the middle of our engagement." "I don't remember the exact date," he mumbled, looking uncomfortable. "It was after that fight we had. I went out for a drink. I ran into her. It just happened. I regretted it immediately. He had cheated on me while we were engaged. The thought was like a physical blow." "You cheated on me," I said, the words tasting like poison. "It was one time," he insisted. "It meant nothing. I love you. I was going to tell you, I swear. I didn't want to ruin things." "Ruin things?" I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "Look around, Liam. Things are ruined." He had the decency to look ashamed. "I know," he said. "I'm so sorry. I can fix this. We can fix this." "How?" I demanded. "How do you fix a baby, Liam? How do you fix the fact that your ex-girlfriend and your mother humiliated me in front of everyone I know?" "My mom was just trying to help," he said weakly. "Help?" I was incredulous. "She was helping Clara. She took her side immediately. She didn't even look at me." "She was worried about the baby," he said, repeating the same pathetic excuse. "She's always wanted to be a grandmother." It was then that I started to see it. The web of manipulation. Beatrice had never liked me. She had made that clear from the beginning with her subtle digs and backhanded compliments. She had always adored Clara. And now Clara was supposedly giving her the one thing I hadn't yet. A grandchild. A male heir. It was all starting to make a sick kind of sense. "I want a paternity test," I said, my voice firm. "As soon as the baby is born." Liam nodded eagerly. "Yes, of course," he said. "I'll tell Clara. We'll get a test. And it will probably turn out not to be mine, and then we can put all of this behind us." He was so desperate to believe that, to find an easy way out. But I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Even if the baby wasn't his, he had still cheated. He had still lied. And his mother had still shown her true colors. The trust between us was broken. I wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. And what happens in the meantime? I asked. For the next few months while she's still pregnant? Am I supposed to just pretend this didn't happen? Am I supposed to welcome your pregnant ex-girlfriend into our lives? No, of course not, he said quickly. I'll handle Clara. I'll make sure she stays away from you. I didn't believe him. He couldn't even handle his own mother. How was he going to handle a determined ex-girlfriend? I knew that this was just the beginning. The drama was far from over, and I was right in the middle of it. Later that day, I got a call from an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. It was Arthur, my father-in-law. Hello, I said, surprised. I hope I'm not disturbing you, he said, his voice low and gravelly. I just wanted to see how you were. I'm managing, I said. It was the best I could do. There was a pause. I want you to know, he said, his voice heavy, that I am deeply ashamed of my family's behavior. What happened at the wedding was inexcusable. Thank you, Arthur, I said, genuinely touched. It was the first time anyone from his side of the family had shown me any real sympathy. I have been married to Beatrice for 35 years, he continued, and it sounded like the words were being dragged out of him. I know what she is capable of, and my son, he has always been weak. It was a startlingly honest admission. He was confirming my own worst fears about Liam. I don't know what the truth is, Arthur said, but I have my suspicions, and I want you to be careful. Don't let them bully you. I won't, I said, a new wave of determination washing over me. Good, he said, and if you ever need anything at all, you can call me. He hung up after that. The call was short, but it was a lifeline. It confirmed that my instincts were right. Something was very wrong here, and it went deeper than a one-night stand. Arthur knew it too, and he was, for whatever reason, on my side. The battle lines were being drawn. It was me and Arthur against Beatrice, Clara, and the man I had married, Liam. I didn't know if I could win, but I knew I had to fight. The days that followed were a tense, miserable limbo. Liam and I were living in the same apartment, but we were like strangers. We moved around each other, speaking only when necessary. The air was thick with unspoken accusations and resentment. He kept saying he was sorry, that he would make it up to me, but his actions spoke louder than his words. He was constantly on the phone, having hushed conversations with his mother and, I presumed, with Clara. He was trying to manage the situation, but it was clear he was in over his head. One evening, I came home from work to find Beatrice in our living room. She was sitting on my sofa as if she owned the place, a smug look on her face. Liam was hovering nearby, looking anxious. What are you doing here? I asked, not bothering to hide my hostility. I came to talk some sense into you, Beatrice said, her voice dripping with condescension. Liam tells me you're demanding a paternity test. It's my right to know if my husband is having a child with another woman, I said, my voice cold. Of course it's his child, she scoffed. Clara is a good girl. She wouldn't lie about something like this. And frankly, it's about time Liam had an heir. You certainly haven't been in any hurry. The insult was so blatant, so cruel, that it took my breath away. We had only been married for a few days. We had talked about waiting a year or two before trying for children. For her to throw that in my face now was beyond vicious. Get out of my house, I said, my voice shaking with rage. This is my son's house, she retorted. And I am his wife, I shot back. And I want you to leave, now. I looked at Liam. Are you going to let her talk to me like that? I demanded. He wrung his hands. Mom, maybe you should go, he said weakly. This isn't helping. I'm just trying to protect my family, she said, standing up. Something you should learn to do, she added, giving me a final, withering look before sweeping out of the apartment. As soon as the door closed behind her, I turned on Liam. "That's it," I said. "I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to live like this, being attacked in my own home by your mother while you just stand there and do nothing." "What did you want me to do?" he cried, his voice filled with frustration. "She's my mother." "And I'm your wife," I yelled back. "You're supposed to defend me. You're supposed to be on my side. But you're not. You're on their side. You always have been." "That's not true," he protested. "Isn't it?" I challenged. "You cheated on me with Clara. You let her and your mother ruin our wedding. You left me on our wedding night to go take care of her. And now you let your mother come into our home and insult me. When have you ever chosen me, Liam? When have you ever put me first?" He had no answer. He just stood there, his face a mask of misery and guilt. The fight went out of me, replaced by a profound sadness. I was married to a boy, not a man. A boy who would always be more loyal to his mother than to his wife. "I'm going to stay with my parents for a few days," I said quietly. "I need some space to think." "No, don't go," he begged, reaching for me. I pulled away. "I have to, Liam," I said. "I can't be here right now." I packed a small bag and left. As I drove to my parents' house, the tears I had been holding back since the wedding finally came. I cried for my ruined wedding, for my broken heart, for the man I thought I had married, and for the future that had been stolen from me. When I got to my parents' house, my mom just held me while I sobbed. I didn't have to explain anything. She already knew. After a few days of hiding out at my parents' house, I started to feel a little stronger. The constant support of my family was a balm to my wounded spirit. My father, a man of few words but deep integrity, was furious on my behalf. "That boy is a coward," he said, and I knew he was right. During that time, I did some thinking. I couldn't just wait around for 9 months for a paternity test. I needed to be proactive. I needed to find out the truth for myself. I remembered Arthur's offer of help. I wasn't sure what he could do, but he was the only person on Liam's side of the family who seemed to have a shred of decency. I decided to call him. "Arthur, it's me," I said when he answered. "I was wondering when you'd call," he said. "How are you holding up?" "I'm getting by," I said. "Listen, I need your help. I don't believe what they're saying. I think there's more to this story." "I agree," he said. "I've been doing a little digging of my own." I was surprised. "You have?" "Yes," he said. "Beatrice has been making some unusual financial transactions lately. Large withdrawals from our joint savings account. She says it's for redecorating, but she's been very secretive about it." My mind started to whirl. "Do you think she's giving money to Clara?" I asked. "It's a strong possibility," he said. "Clara doesn't have a job. She has no family in the area. How else would she be supporting herself?" It made perfect sense. Beatrice was funding this entire scheme. She wasn't just a passive supporter, she was an active participant. "Is there any way to prove it?" I asked. "I'm working on it," he said. "But in the meantime, I think you should focus on the timeline. Liam said the incident happened a few months ago. Do you know when Clara claims she conceived?" "No," I said. "I haven't spoken to her." "You should find out," he said. "Pregnancies can be dated quite accurately. If her timeline doesn't match up with when Liam says he was with her, you'll have your proof." It was a solid plan. It was concrete. It was something I could do. "How do I find that out?" I asked. "That," he said, "is something you'll have to figure out on your own. But I have a feeling you're more resourceful than they give you credit for." He was right. I was done being a victim. I was going to become a detective. My first mission, find out Clara's due date. I knew I couldn't just call Clara and ask her. She would never tell me the truth. I needed a different approach. I thought about who might know. A mutual friend, perhaps? Liam and Clara had a few friends in common from their college days. I scrolled through Liam's social media, looking for a name, a face, someone who might be sympathetic. I found one, a woman named Jessica. I remembered meeting her once or twice. She had always been nice to me, and she didn't seem to be in Beatrice's inner circle. I decided to take a chance. I found her number and called her. Jessica? Hi, it's Liam's wife, I said, stumbling over the words. It felt strange to still call myself that. Oh, hi, she said, her voice cautious. I heard about what happened at the wedding. I'm so sorry. That was awful. It's okay, I said, though it wasn't. Listen, I know this is a weird question, but I was hoping you could help me with something. I'm trying to figure out some details about Clara's pregnancy. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I thought maybe I had made a mistake, that she wouldn't want to get involved. What do you want to know? She finally asked. I need to know when she's due, I said. Or when she found out she was pregnant. Anything like that. Jessica sighed. Look, she said, I don't want to be in the middle of this, but I will say this. Clara told a few of us that she found out she was pregnant about 3 months ago. She said she was about 8 weeks along at the time. 3 months ago. 8 weeks along. I did the math in my head. That meant she would have conceived about 5 months ago. I thanked Jessica and hung up the phone, my heart pounding. 5 months ago. Liam and I had been engaged for a month at that point. We had been happy, blissfully happy. I tried to remember if he had mentioned seeing Clara around that time. He hadn't. He had been with me almost constantly. Then I remembered what he had told me. He said he had slept with her after a fight. We did have a fight around that time. It was a stupid argument about wedding invitations. He had stormed out of the apartment to get some air. He was gone for a few hours. When he came back, he was apologetic and sweet. We made up. I never thought anything of it. But now that night looked very different. He had lied to me. He hadn't just gone for a walk. He had gone straight to Clara. The betrayal was deeper than I had even imagined. He hadn't just made a mistake. He had cheated on me, lied about it, and then asked me to marry him, all while knowing that his ex-girlfriend might be pregnant with his child. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but they were forming a picture that was uglier than I could have ever imagined. The timeline fit. It was possible. The baby could be his. A wave of despair washed over me. For a moment, I wanted to give up, to just walk away from it all. But then I thought of Beatrice's triumphant face. I thought of Liam's weakness. And I thought of Arthur's quiet encouragement. No. I couldn't give up. The timeline might fit, but something still felt wrong. It was too neat, too convenient. Clara showing up at the wedding, the perfect dramatic moment. Beatrice's immediate support. It felt staged. I called Arthur back. I found out the due date, I said, and told him what Jessica had said. I see, he said, his voice grim. That does complicate things. But it feels wrong, I insisted. It's too perfect. Do you think they could be lying about the dates? It's possible, he said, but it would be hard to prove. A doctor's record would be the only way. And there's no way I can get that, I said, deflated. No, he agreed. But there might be another way. You said Jessica told you that Clara told a few people about the pregnancy 3 months ago. Who else did she tell? I don't know, I said. Find out, he urged. People make mistakes. They get their stories crossed. If Clara told different people different things, you might be able to catch her in a lie. He was right again. I needed more information. I needed to talk to more people. This was far from over. I was just getting started. The next few weeks were a strange kind of purgatory. I was still staying with my parents, and Liam would call or text every day, begging me to come home. He swore he would make things right, that he loved me, that we could get through this. I ignored most of his messages. I couldn't talk to him. Not yet. I needed to be focused. I spent my days doing research. I became a reluctant expert in pregnancy timelines, conception dates, and due date calculations. I also went back to social media, looking for more of Clara and Liam's mutual friends. I made a list of names and started reaching out, one by one. It was a delicate process. I couldn't seem too desperate or too accusatory. I had to be subtle. I would start by saying I was just trying to understand the situation, that I wanted what was best for everyone, especially the baby. Most people were hesitant to talk. They didn't want to get involved. But a few were willing to share small tidbits of information. One friend, a guy named Mark, told me something interesting. He said he remembered Clara complaining about feeling sick at a party about 4 months ago. He had joked that maybe she was pregnant, and she had gotten very defensive and angry. At the time, he thought it was a strange overreaction. But now, it seemed significant. If she was already feeling sick 4 months ago, that would push the conception date back even further. Another friend, a woman named Emily, said she had run into Clara at the mall about 2 months ago. Clara had been shopping for maternity clothes. Emily had asked her when she was due, and Clara had vaguely said, in the fall. But she had also made a strange comment. She had said, "I just hope this all works out the way it's supposed to." It was an odd thing to say. It sounded less like an expectant mother and more like someone who was part of a plan. I was collecting puzzle pieces, but I still couldn't see the whole picture. The timeline was messy, full of contradictions. Clara had told Jessica she conceived 5 months ago, but she was feeling sick 4 months ago, and 2 months ago she was already buying maternity clothes. It didn't quite add up. Meanwhile, Arthur was continuing his own investigation. He called me one evening with an update. "I have something," he said, his voice tense. "I got a look at our credit card statements. Beatrice has been making regular payments to a law firm, a very expensive family law firm." "Why would she need a family lawyer?" I asked, confused. "I don't know," he said. "But I have a bad feeling about it. It seems she's preparing for a legal battle. And there's more. She also made a very large payment to a private investigation agency." A private investigator? My blood ran cold. "Was she investigating me?" I asked. "I don't know who she was investigating," he said. "But it's clear that she is playing a much bigger game than we thought. This isn't just about a baby, my dear. This is a coordinated attack." The conversation left me feeling shaken. Beatrice wasn't just a meddling mother-in-law. She was a cunning and ruthless opponent. She was using her money and her influence to orchestrate this whole situation. And I had no idea what her ultimate goal was. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the lawyer, the private investigator, the contradictory timelines. It was all a tangled mess. I felt like I was in over my head. I was just one person against a powerful and manipulative woman. The next morning, I made a decision. I couldn't do this alone anymore. I needed professional help. I found a private investigator of my own, a woman named Carla. She was a former police detective with a reputation for being tough and thorough. I met with her in a small, discreet office. I told her everything. The wedding, Clara's announcement, Liam's confession, Beatrice's behavior, Arthur's suspicions. I laid out all the puzzle pieces I had collected. She listened patiently, taking notes, her face unreadable. When I was finished, she looked at me for a long moment. "This is quite a mess," she said, a master of understatement. "I know," I said. "Can you help me?" "I can," she said, "but it will be expensive, and I can't guarantee what I'll find." "I don't care about the cost," I said. I had some savings, and my parents had offered to help. "I just need the truth." "All right, then," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. "Let's get to work." Carla was a force of nature. Within a few days, she had started to uncover things I never could have found on my own. She ran a background check on Clara. It turned out that Clara had a history of financial problems. She had a mountain of debt and had declared bankruptcy 2 years ago. She was desperate for money. Carla also managed to find out where Clara was getting her prenatal care. It was a high-end clinic, the kind that only the very wealthy could afford. There was no way Clara could be paying for that on her own. It had to be Beatrice. But the biggest breakthrough came a week later. Carla called me, her voice excited. "I think I've got something big," she said. I was looking into Clara's social media. Most of it is locked down, but I found an old account she doesn't use anymore. And I found a picture. "A picture of what?" I asked. "A picture of her and another man," Carla said. "It was posted about 6 months ago. They look very cozy. His name is Ben. And according to his own social media, he and Clara were in a serious relationship until about 4 months ago." My heart leaped. 6 months ago? I repeated. That would be around the time she supposedly conceived. "Exactly," Carla said. "And it gets better. This guy, Ben, he moved to another state for a new job about 4 months ago, right around the time Clara would have started showing, and right around the time Mark said she was acting weird at that party. The pieces were finally clicking into place. The real picture was starting to emerge, and it was even darker than I had imagined. "So you think," I started, not daring to say it out loud. "I think there's a very good chance that Liam is not the father," Carla said. "I think the real father is this guy, Ben. And I think Clara and Beatrice have been lying about the conception date to make it seem like it was Liam." It was a bombshell. A beautiful, glorious bombshell. If this was true, it would blow their whole scheme apart. "Can you prove it?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of hope and excitement. "I'm working on it," Carla said. "I'm trying to track down this Ben. If I can get him to talk, we'll have our smoking gun." The next few days were excruciating. I was on edge, constantly checking my phone, waiting for Carla's call. I didn't tell anyone about the new development, not even Arthur. I didn't want to get my hopes up, or his, until I had concrete proof. During this time, Liam's attempts to contact me became more and more frantic. He left long, rambling voicemails, begging me to forgive him. He even showed up at my parents' house one evening. My father answered the door and told him, in no uncertain terms, to leave and not come back until he had something real to say. Finally, the call came. It was Carla. "I found him," she said. "I found Ben." "And?" I asked, my heart in my throat. "And he's willing to talk," she said. "He says Clara broke up with him out of the blue a few months ago. He was heartbroken. He had no idea she was pregnant. He's on his way back to town now. He wants to meet with you." I couldn't believe it. It was happening. The truth was finally coming out. I agreed to meet Ben the next day. Carla would be there with me. I was a nervous wreck before the meeting. What if he changed his mind? What if he was lying? But when I saw him, my fears subsided. Ben was a kind-faced young man with sad eyes. He looked completely bewildered by the whole situation. He told us his story. He and Clara had been together for over a year. They had been talking about getting married. Then, about 4 months ago, she had suddenly become distant and moody. She picked fights over nothing. Finally, she broke up with him, saying she needed space. A week later, he moved for his new job. He had tried to stay in touch, but she had cut off all contact. He had no idea she was pregnant until Carla contacted him. "I can't believe she wouldn't tell me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "If it's my baby, I have a right to know." "We believe it is your baby," Carla said gently. "The timeline fits perfectly." "We need to be sure," I said. "We need a paternity test." "I'll do it," Ben said without hesitation. "I want to know the truth." The final piece of the puzzle was a legal one. How could we compel Clara to take a paternity test before the baby was born? Carla had an idea. We could file a legal petition, citing Ben as the probable father. It would force Clara's hand, and it would bring the whole conspiracy out into the open. But I had a better idea, a more dramatic one. I didn't just want to expose them in a courtroom. I wanted to confront them. I wanted to see the looks on their faces when their carefully constructed web of lies came crashing down. I told Carla my plan. She was hesitant at first. "It could get ugly," she warned. "I'm counting on it," I said. So we set the stage. I called Liam. I told him I was ready to talk. I said I wanted to meet with him, and Clara and his mother. I wanted everyone in the same room. I said it was time to make a plan for the future for the baby. He was relieved, pathetically grateful. He agreed immediately. He said he would arrange it. The meeting was set for the following evening at Arthur and Beatrice's house. It was the perfect location. Beatrice's home turf, the scene of her triumph. I wanted to turn it into the scene of her downfall. I spent the day preparing. I went over the timeline, the evidence, the contradictions. I met with Carla and Ben one last time to coordinate our plan. Ben was nervous but determined. He wanted to be there. He wanted to face Clara. That evening, I drove to their house. I was surprisingly calm. The fear and hurt had been replaced by a cold, hard certainty. I was in control now. I held all the cards. When I walked in, they were all there, sitting in the formal living room. Liam, Beatrice, and Clara. They looked like a happy little family unit. Clara was glowing, her hand resting protectively on her belly. Beatrice was smiling, a smug, self-satisfied expression on her face. Liam just looked anxious, as usual. "Thank you for coming," Beatrice said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I'm so glad you've decided to be reasonable." "I'm not here to be reasonable," I said, my voice clear and steady. "I'm here to tell you that the game is over." Their smiles faded. They looked at me, confused. "I know everything," I said. I looked at Clara. "I know that you've been lying about when you conceived this baby." I looked at Beatrice. "I know that you've been paying her to keep up this charade." And I looked at Liam. "And I know that you are not the father." The silence in the room was absolute. Clara went pale, Beatrice's face contorted with rage. Liam just stared at me, his mouth hanging open. "That's a ridiculous accusation," Beatrice finally sputtered. "You have no proof." "Oh, but I do," I said. "You see, I found him, the real father." And right on cue, the doorbell rang. Arthur, who had been standing silently in the doorway, went to open it. A moment later, he led Ben into the room. Clara gasped when she saw him. All the color drained from her face. She looked like she was going to faint. "Ben?" she whispered. "Hello, Clara," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "We need to talk." Beatrice was on her feet, her face a mask of fury. "Who is this man?" she demanded. "Get him out of my house." "This," I said, enjoying the moment, "is Ben, Clara's ex-boyfriend, and the father of her child. They were together for a year. They broke up just 4 months ago, right after she got pregnant. Funny how she never mentioned him, isn't it?" Liam was looking back and forth between Clara and Ben, his face a mess of confusion and dawning horror. "Clara?" he said. "Is this true?" Clara burst into tears. She couldn't even look at him. Her silence was all the confession we needed. Beatrice, however, was not ready to give up. "This is a trick," she shrieked. "You're trying to get out of your responsibilities, Liam. Don't listen to her." "It's not a trick, Mother," a voice said from the doorway. It was Arthur. He was holding a file in his hands. "I've been doing some research of my own." He walked into the room and handed the file to Liam. "These are the bank statements you asked for, Beatrice. The ones showing the large payments to Clara's account, and to the law firm, and to the private investigator you hired to follow your own son to make sure he was still seeing Clara behind his wife's back." Beatrice looked like she had been struck by lightning. She stared at her husband, speechless. Liam opened the file. His hands were shaking. He looked at the papers, his face growing paler with each page he turned. He saw the payments. He saw the dates. He saw the whole sordid story laid out in black and white. "You knew," he said, his voice barely a whisper. He looked at his mother. You knew all along. You set this whole thing up. I did it for you, she cried, her composure finally cracking. She's not good enough for you. I wanted you to have a family, a legacy. With the right kind of woman. The right kind of woman? Liam repeated, his voice filled with the disgust I had never heard from him before. You mean a liar? A cheat? You destroyed my marriage for this? He turned to Clara, who was still sobbing. And you, he said, his voice dripping with contempt. You let her use you. You lied to me. You tried to pass off another man's child as mine. I was desperate, Clara sobbed. She promised me. She promised she would take care of me and the baby. By ruining my life? Liam yelled. By humiliating the woman I love? He actually said it. He called me the woman he loved. It was a little too late, but he said it. He looked at me then, his eyes pleading. I'm so sorry, he said. I was so stupid. I should have believed you. I should have trusted you. I just looked at him. I felt nothing. No pity, no love, no anger. Just a vast empty space where my feelings for him used to be. It's over, Liam, I said quietly. All of it. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Ben and Clara had a paternity test. It confirmed what we already knew. He was the father. He decided to step up and be a part of his child's life, but he made it clear to Clara that their romantic relationship was over. She had lost everything. The rich husband, the wealthy mother-in-law, the comfortable life she had been promised. She was left with a baby and a mountain of debt. Last I heard, she was working 2 jobs to make ends meet. Beatrice faced her own reckoning. Arthur filed for divorce. He said he could no longer live with a woman who was so cruel and manipulative. He used the evidence of her financial deception against her in the divorce proceedings. She lost a significant portion of her wealth. But more than that, she lost her social standing. The story of what she had done spread like wildfire through their social circle. She became a pariah, the woman who tried to buy her son a fake family. And Liam? He was a broken man. He lost his wife, his mother's respect, and his father's trust. He begged me to take him back, but I refused. The trust was gone forever. He had shown me who he was, a weak man, easily controlled by his mother. I couldn't build a life with someone like that. Our marriage was annulled. It was as if it had never happened. As for me, I got my life back. I moved into a new apartment, focused on my career, and reconnected with my friends and family. I had been through a fire, but I had come out stronger on the other side. A few months later, I got a call from Arthur. He had finalized his divorce. He wanted to meet for coffee. I was hesitant, but I agreed. He looked older, more tired, but there was a new lightness in his eyes. He told me he was selling the large family home and moving into a smaller place. He was traveling more, rediscovering his own interests. He seemed free. I wanted to thank you, he said. For what? I asked, surprised. For opening my eyes, he said. I had been living in a state of quiet desperation for years. I knew what Beatrice was, but I didn't have the courage to do anything about it. You gave me that courage. You showed me what it means to fight for the truth. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a check. It was for a very large amount of money. What is this? I asked, shocked. It's from me, he said. It's not a payment. It's an investment. In you. You went through a terrible ordeal because of my family. I want you to have a fresh start. No strings attached. I tried to refuse, but he insisted. You're a remarkable woman, he said. You deserve every happiness. I finally accepted the check. It wasn't about the money. It was about the validation. It was about knowing that someone saw my worth, that someone recognized the injustice I had suffered. I never saw Beatrice or Liam again. I heard through the grapevine that Liam eventually moved to a different city, trying to escape the shadow of his family's scandal. Beatrice became a recluse, rarely leaving her house. My life, on the other hand, blossomed. I used the money from Arthur to start my own business, something I had always dreamed of doing. It was a success. I found a new sense of purpose and independence. I learned to trust myself again. Sometimes I think about that night, the night my world fell apart. It's a painful memory, but it's also a reminder of my own strength. I faced the worst kind of betrayal and humiliation, but I didn't let it destroy me. I fought back. I uncovered the truth, and I got my justice. They tried to break me, but they only made me stronger. They taught me a valuable lesson. A wedding ring is just a piece of metal. A backbone is forged in the fire of betrayal. And mine was now made of steel. The whole ordeal was a trial by fire, and I had not only survived, but I had emerged victorious. The satisfaction of seeing their lives crumble under the weight of their own lies was a feeling I would never forget. It was a bitter victory, but a victory nonetheless. My revenge was not loud or flashy. It was the quiet, steady rebuilding of my own life on the ashes of theirs. And that was the sweetest revenge of all. My conversations with Sarah, my best friend, were a constant source of support throughout the entire process. After the wedding, when I was holed up at my parents' house, she came over every day. She would bring coffee and just sit with me, letting me talk or cry or just be silent. "I still can't believe he did that," she said one afternoon, shaking her head in disgust. "To let that happen at your own wedding. And his mother. What kind of monster smiles while her new daughter-in-law is being humiliated?" "The kind who planned the whole thing," I said grimly. At that point, it was just a suspicion, a gut feeling. "You really think so?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide. "I do," I said. It was too perfect. Clara's timing, Beatrice's reaction. It felt rehearsed. "So what are you going to do?" she asked. "I'm going to find out the truth," I said, my voice filled with a determination that surprised even me. "I'm not going to let them get away with this." Sarah was my sounding board as I started my investigation. I told her about my conversation with Arthur, and she was as shocked as I was by his honesty. "Wow," she said. "So the father-in-law is on your side. That's a twist." "He's the only one," I said. "He told me to be careful. He said Beatrice is capable of anything." When I told her my plan to contact Liam and Clara's mutual friends, she was supportive but cautious. "Just be careful," she warned. "You don't know who you can trust. People take sides." She was right. Some of the people I contacted were loyal to Liam and Clara and refused to talk to me. But Sarah helped me stay focused. Every time I hit a dead end, she would encourage me to keep trying. "You're a dog with a bone," she told me one night after I had spent hours on the phone, getting nowhere. "You'll crack this. I know you will." Her unwavering belief in me was a huge source of strength. She was the one who encouraged me to hire Carla, the private investigator. "You need a professional," she had said. "You've done all you can on your own. It's time to bring in the big guns." After the final confrontation, after the truth was out, Sarah was the first person I called. I told her everything that had happened, how Ben had shown up, how Arthur had produced the bank statements, how Beatrice and Clara's lies had unraveled before their eyes. She listened in stunned silence. When I was finished, she let out a long, low whistle. "Wow," she said. "That's better than any movie I've ever seen. You are my hero." "I'm not a hero," I said. "I just wanted the truth." "You got more than that," she said. "You got justice. Sweet, sweet justice. I hope Beatrice is rotting in her mansion of shame." We met for a celebratory dinner a few days later. It felt strange to be celebrating the end of my marriage, but it was also a celebration of my own resilience. "To you," Sarah said, raising her glass, "for being the strongest person I know." "To friendship," I said, clinking my glass against hers. "I couldn't have done it without you." My interactions with Arthur were less frequent, but no less important. After that first phone call, we spoke every week or so. He would give me small updates on his own investigation into Beatrice's finances, and I would tell him what I had learned from my own digging. We were unlikely allies, bound together by our shared desire for the truth and our mutual disgust for Beatrice's actions. He never once questioned my motives or my methods. He seemed to understand that I was not just a woman scorned, but a person fighting against a grave injustice. He treated me with a respect that his own son had never shown me. The day of the confrontation, he was my silent partner. He let me take the lead, but his presence was a powerful statement. When he stepped forward with that file of bank statements, it was the final, devastating blow to Beatrice's defenses. He had chosen a side. He had chosen me. He had chosen integrity over his own wife. Our coffee meeting after his divorce was a quiet, reflective affair. We didn't talk much about the past. We talked about the future. His plans to travel, my plans to start a business. You know, he said, stirring his coffee. For years, I enabled her. By staying silent, I allowed her to become the person she is. I regret that. I regret not standing up to her sooner. You stood up to her when it counted, I said. Because of you, he said, looking me in the eye. You inspired me. I saw you, this young woman, refusing to be broken, refusing to be silenced. And I thought, if she can be that brave, why can't I? His words meant more to me than he could ever know. I had spent months feeling like a victim. But in his eyes, I was a hero. The final conversations I had were with Liam. After the annulment, he continued to call and text, but his messages changed. The desperate pleas for forgiveness were replaced by a quiet, resigned sadness. He seemed to have finally accepted that our marriage was over. One day, about a year after the wedding, he asked if we could meet. He was moving out of state and wanted to say goodbye. I was hesitant, but a part of me was curious. I wanted to see if he had changed, if he had learned anything from the whole ordeal. We met at a neutral coffee shop. He looked different, thinner, more subdued. The arrogant swagger he used to have was gone. Thank you for meeting me, he said. It's fine, I said. I hear you're moving. Yeah, he said. New job, new start. I need to get away from everything. We sat in an awkward silence for a few moments. I wanted to apologize again, he finally said. Properly this time. Not just because I got caught, but because I was wrong. I was a coward. I let my mother control me. I let her poison our relationship from the start. And I betrayed you. I cheated on you and I lied about it. And then I was too weak to stand by you when you needed me. There's no excuse for what I did. I was a terrible husband. And I'm sorry. It was the apology I had needed to hear a year ago. It was heartfelt and honest. He wasn't making excuses. He was taking responsibility. Thank you, Liam, I said. I appreciate that. I know it's too late to fix things, he said, looking down at his hands. But I just wanted you to know that I know. I know what I lost. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. And I threw it all away because I was too afraid to stand up to my own mother. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a deep, profound regret. I hope you can be happy, he said. You deserve it. I am happy, Liam, I said, and I realized with a jolt that it was true. I was genuinely happy. My life was good. It was my own. We parted ways after that. I never saw him again. That final conversation brought a sense of closure that I didn't even know I needed. He had finally become the man I thought he was, but it was too late. His weakness had cost him everything. The fallout for the antagonist was comprehensive and deeply satisfying. Beatrice's was perhaps the most public. She had built her entire identity around her social status, her perfect family, and her role as the matriarch of a respected family. When Arthur divorced her and the details of her scheme came out, that identity was shattered. Her friends, the ones she had spent years cultivating, abandoned her. They were horrified by what she had done, not just to me, but to her own son. She became a social leper. The invitations to parties and charity events stopped coming. The whispers would start whenever she entered a room. She had wanted to control her family's image, and in the end, she had destroyed it. Clara's downfall was more personal and in some ways more tragic. She had pinned all her hopes on a lie. She had allowed herself to be used as a pawn in Beatrice's game, believing it was her ticket to a life of ease and luxury. When the truth came out, she was left with nothing. Ben, while committed to being a father, wanted nothing to do with her romantically. He saw her for what she was, a dishonest and manipulative person. She had to get a job, find her own apartment, and learn to stand on her own 2 feet for the first time in her life. The fantasy she had been sold by Beatrice had dissolved, leaving only the harsh reality of single motherhood and financial struggle. The consequences for Liam were more internal. He didn't lose his social standing or his money, but he lost his family and his self-respect. His father was deeply disappointed in him, and their relationship was strained for a long time. His mother, the person he had always tried to please, had proven that her love was conditional and her actions were selfish, and he had lost me. He had to live with the knowledge that he had allowed his own weakness to destroy the best relationship he had ever had. That kind of regret is a heavy burden to carry. My life, in contrast, was a story of ascent. The annulment was a clean break, a legal declaration that the marriage had been based on fraud. It was a vindication. The money from Arthur was a tool, one that I used wisely. I didn't go on a spending spree. I invested it in my dream. I started a small graphic design company. I worked hard, putting all the energy that had gone into my sham of a marriage into building something that was truly my own. The business thrived. It gave me a sense of accomplishment and independence that I had never known before. I also took the time to heal. I went to therapy. I talked through the anger and the hurt. I learned to set boundaries. I learned that I was not responsible for other people's choices. I learned to trust my own instincts. I had known from the beginning that something was wrong, but I had allowed my love for Liam to cloud my judgment. I would never make that mistake again. About 2 years after the wedding, I met someone. His name was David. He was kind and funny and smart. He was also strong, with a quiet confidence that was the complete opposite of Liam's anxious need for approval. He had a great relationship with his own family, one based on mutual respect, not control. I was cautious at first. I told him my story early on. I didn't want any secrets. He listened patiently, his expression a mixture of shock and sympathy. When I was finished, he just said, "I'm so sorry you had to go through that, but I'm glad you did, because it made you the strong, amazing woman you are today." He wasn't intimidated by my past. He wasn't afraid of my strength. He celebrated it. With him, I felt safe. I felt seen. I felt loved for who I was, not for who someone wanted me to be. We got married a year later. It was a small ceremony, just close family and friends, on a beach at sunset. There was no big reception, no dramatic first dance. It was simple and perfect and real. When we said our vows, I looked into his eyes and I knew that this time, it was forever. My life now is full and happy. I have a successful business, a loving husband, and a wonderful stepdaughter from David's previous marriage. We have a home filled with laughter and respect. Every now and then, I think about Liam and Beatrice and Clara. I don't feel anger anymore. I just feel a kind of distant pity. They were all trapped in their own webs of lies and insecurity. They thought they could manipulate their way to happiness, but all they did was create misery. My final, lingering thought on the matter is this. They thought they were ruining my life, but they were actually liberating me. They freed me from a weak man and a toxic family. They forced me to find my own strength, my own voice, my own path. Their betrayal was the catalyst for my transformation. They wanted to see me fall, but instead, they taught me how to fly. And for that, in a strange way, I will always be grateful. The best revenge is not just living well. It's becoming a person they could never be, and building a life they could never have. I won. Not by fighting them on their own terms, but by rising above them and leaving them to drown in the mess they had created. The satisfaction from that is quiet, but it is deep and it is lasting. It is the peace that comes from knowing you have truly, finally won.